introduce you guys to this wonderful gentleman who is taking time to talk with us about the journey that he has been on with his wife. We've got with us tonight David Ball. He is going to be our guest speaker. He's been retired since 2017 with over 30 years experience as a consumer services and community mediation coordinator with a county district attorney's office in California. And he, among other things, has supervised staff with consumer protection information in order mediators. And he's also, while he's not an attorney, he is successful in helping his wife, Jeannie. For those of you that know Jeannie Ball, thank you so much, Jeannie, for reaching out to us. We really appreciate that. He has been able to help her obtain compassionate allowance from the Social Security Administration. And he has got a lot of background experience in helping to provide what you need to provide evidence for your support, to support your claim, and maybe not even have to hire a private attorney to actually get through that process. So we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to, again, ask questions or put them over in the chat. But without further delay, please, David, share with us your experience and your journey and help us figure out what we need to do to go through that process if some of us are in that position. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Well, thank you, Norma. And I wish everybody happy holidays. Coming up with Christmas coming up shortly. And so wish everybody have a great, happy holiday. And we're heading into the holiday season. As Norma said, I'm not an attorney and I'm certainly not a neurologist, but I did help Jeannie, who is also an ambassador for Northern California, through the process of getting and obtaining disability benefits through the Social Security Administration. Yes, it can be a little daunting, but it can be done. And I'm going to work you through the steps in order to possibly get you guys some benefits if you so desire to move that direction. But I'm going to relate my experiences with Social Security Administration and the process of gaining kind of the topic here, which is compassionate allowance and its related benefits. So what is compassionate allowance? Social Security Administration makes a determination, and that calls for an expedited review of a condition that allows the awarding of SSDI or SSI to an individual. What's the difference? SSDI is Social Security disability benefits, and SSI is supplemental security benefits or insurance. The two criteria for that is, have you or have you not, at the time of getting this determination or awarding of benefits, had you put in sufficient quarters in Social Security? In other words, you paid into the system, either as self-employed or working for an organization or entity. If you've got the 40 quarters in, if you do qualify for the benefits, you would get SSDI. The nice thing about SSDI is that should it be awarded prior to the time that you actually are up for retirement age under Social Security, it automatically turns into retirement benefit when you reach that particular age. And also on top of that, you do receive cost of living benefits all along the way. So it's like an early retirement. So is the Social Security Administration of the government protective of that particular benefit? Likely, yes. So they do provide you with a few obstacles that you need to broach, shall we say. So Norma, you got that list of compassionate allowances?
Yes.
That we can
Go
show
ahead,
people?
Thank you so much, David. For those of you that have the chat box, we're going to temporarily show you the website that you will need to go to, and you will need to just immerse yourself in the information that's here. So we're going to show you what the website looks like. and David can have a little more conversation about that. And then if you will look over in the chat box, we're going to stop sharing it eventually so that you can see David entirely. So over in the chat box is the website. So if you guys can multitask and you can click on that link, then you can see that information as he's talking about it. So please go ahead, David. Thank you so much.
Sure. Keep in mind that this is www.ssa.gov, not .com, because that goes to a commercial site who may want to, I'm not saying you're going to, but possibly sell you the information that's free of charge to you, and or may take you some places where they would offer you services that you may not necessarily need. So we're going to work our way through this particular program, which I want to go through. But this is primarily the site that you want to start with, showing all the compassion allowance conditions that they have. Now, these conditions may include like ALS, Friedreich's ataxia. I'm not sure whether you've heard about that before, but it also includes something called spinocerebellar ataxia. Now, are these all life-threatening conditions? The answer is not necessarily. Here's the example. Spinocerebellar ataxia, 80% of it is considered as sporadic. What is sporadic? Means it's got an unknown cause. This goes back to when Jeannie, my wife, was diagnosed, if you want to call it that, just said that she had ataxia. Spinocerebellar ataxia could be where there's atrophy of the cerebellum. But also, she had ataxia, which impacted her balance and coordination below the waist. Now, she had that in 2007, and we had gone through several hospitals, doctors, etc., to try to figure out what is the cause of this. Of course, it all led to, thank goodness, for having testing now, where now we know for a fact she's got HSP SPG7. But back then, we didn't know. We were belonging to an organization called NAF, which is the National Ataxia Foundation, as very similar to SPF, because they look primarily at those people affected or afflicted with this particular condition. They happened to put out around 2009, 2010, that ataxias or sporadic ataxia, such as what Jeannie was characterized as, was open to getting determination by the Social Security Administration as having eligible for compassionate allowance. So it became a condition. That means that, according to Social Security Administration, it expedites a determination whether the person that's eligible for SSDI benefits. But before we get to that particular compassionate, of which noticeably absent is HSP and PLS. So how do we go about getting the SSDI benefits or SSI benefits when we are not part of that compassionate allowance group? It's somewhat the same way of what we do whenever you're dealing with a disability and you're applying for benefits. So I'll go through that listing with you. But what is a disability? A disability, according to Social Security Administration, they say, we consider you to have a qualifying disability under Social Security rules if all of the following are true. 1, you cannot do work and engage in substantial gainful activity. They call it SGA because of your medical condition. You want to take into consideration all these things that are listed here, because when you address and applying for the benefits, you want to be as complete and accurate as possible, including those things that are under the compassion allowances of what they determined there, as well as what normally would be for a disability subject to determination. 2, you cannot do work you did previously or adjust to other work because of your medical condition. I guess one of the big criteria here is adjust to other work because of your medical condition. 3, your condition has lasted or is expected to last for at least 1 year or result in death. Now, we already know from the compassion allowances listing and so forth, not all end up being a death situation or a disability that leads to death. So what they say is this is a strict definition of disability. Social Security program rules assume that working families have access to other resources to provide support during periods of short-term disabilities, including workers' compensation, insurance, savings, and investments. There are no benefits payable for partial disability or for short-term disability. So this is the long-term program. The idea is that actually this is like an early retirement when you're covered under Social Security, that you might be 35, you might be 40, but you're not 67 or 68 when you normally would be retiring. But because of, if you're not doing substantial gainful activity, you don't have a lot of income, basically you're now more eligible for it than if you were making a substantial amount of money and you're still working with a disability, or it's short term. So it goes on to say, if you can't do the work you did in the past, we look to see if there is other work you could do despite your medical impairments. We consider your medical conditions, age, education, past work experience, and any transferable skills you may have. If you can't do other work, we'll decide you qualify for disability benefits. If you can do other work, we'll decide that you don't have a qualifying disability and your claim will be denied. So they're kind of setting you up, say that, okay, well, this is not something that we're going to grant randomly. The idea, you have to prove up to Social Security that you qualify, whether it's compassion allowance or whether it's just through normal disability. So if you have enough work to qualify disability benefits, they use a step-by-step approach involving 5 questions to determine if you have a qualifying disability. The 5 questions are the following. They use generally earnings guidelines to evaluate whether you work activity is SGA. That's what we talked about, substantial gainful activity.
Let me shut this off.
If you are working in 2022 and your earnings average more than $1,350, you generally cannot be considered to have a qualifying disability. So low income or some income or no income at all will help you as far as qualifying for the benefit. If you're not working or are working but not performing SGA, we will send your application to Disability Determination Services, it's called DDS, office that you will make the decision about your medical condition. They'll make the decision. The DDS uses, and they give you steps 2 through 5 to make a decision. So what's the second step? Your condition must significantly limit your ability to do basic work related activities such as lifting, standing, walking, sitting, or remembering for at least 12 months. So here we go. It's 12 months and more versus the 12 months and less. Short term, don't qualify. If it does not, they will find that you do not have a qualifying disability. So you don't follow that particular pattern. It's called exclude you versus include you. but they're going step by step. If your condition does interfere with basic work related activities, they go to step 3. Now, I'm kind of going through all these steps as well as qualifying for the disability for the reason why when you apply for disability benefits, you want to, shall we say, hunt for bear, because the idea is that you want to have as much going for you and as much proof and as much evidence you have to support your claim of disability and receive the benefits. Sure, go ahead, Norman.
And David, and all of these steps that you're going over, they're on that website. Is that
Yes.
correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The steps and the questions, all of that can be found on the website that we've added into the chat, which is the screenshot that we actually showed you originally. Okay.
Absolutely
Great.
correct.
I wanted to make sure that we can go through there and find that information, and then we'll have that link also on our website.
Yeah, they kind of make it a little circuitous route that you have to go through one, and then you have to find the next page, and then you have to go to the next page, and then, eventually you'll get a book, of all the different pages, and just have to know what you're looking for.
And
You
so
know, that-
do you happen to have a book that you could actually just send that to us as a PDF, as a document?
I wish, but I don't have,
Oh.
I haven't done that as of yet, but I might consider that. But I'd be more
Okay.
happy to try and get to that.
We'll have a link on our website so that we can let you guys have that as a downloadable document as well. Mary,
Yeah, I
did you
think
have a
that-
quick question?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Sure, we have a question here. Mary?
Yeah. Go ahead, please, Mary. You got a question? You're on mute. Both your devices are on mute.
I don't really have a question. I am an attorney, but I don't have a background in Social Security benefits. But a friend of mine helped me with my application. And I just wanted to say, first of all, there's a checklist, and I think I got it on ssa.gov, but I don't know. I've got a PDF copy of it somewhere, so I can send that. And also, I would be happy to give anybody my application because it was approved the first time I applied, and I assumed that I would have to do a hearing. And all the Social Security Administration hearings are by Zoom. So I think all of us look fine on Zoom. It's when we walk or move. And so I'm concerned that that would be harder to establish in a hearing, but I didn't have to go that far. But I'd be happy I don't think that I'm the ambassador for Missouri, but I don't think the Missouri or the email addresses are on there anymore. But it's basically my name, Mary Bridget Schultz @outlook.com. And if you contact me, I'd be happy to send that to you.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. Okay, that's very good to know. That's very good to know. Thank you so much. Mr. David, you want to continue on?
Yeah, I was going to probably say, Mary, you helped with an application. Is that what you did?
No, I applied myself.
Oh, you did for yourself. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Were you successful the first time?
Yes.
Okay, it can be done. Now, Mary's an attorney, but on the same hand, you don't necessarily have to be an attorney. What I'm going to go through a little bit is that there's actually a form which makes it eligible for anybody that you want, whether it be a friend or a relative or whatever, to help you with the application process. In fact, you can even appear, should it get to that point, on behalf of the person that you're supporting, shall we say, to appear with a representative of either Social Security Administration, or in my particular case, of dealing with Jeannie, it was dealing with somebody from social services at the state level, Department of Social Services. And I'm not sure, Mary, whether you went through that particular process or not.
Yes.
You did. Okay, gotcha. Okay. So you can have that. I mean, Mary, as you know, you could probably do a POA, which is very limited, a limited POA, power of attorney, to have somebody represent you. I, in fact, filled out the specific form that Social Security Administration provides to assist someone who is seeking the disability benefits. So anyway, so in going through, one of the other things that we're going through a step-by-step approach here, if the condition is found in the list of disability conditions, and the list of conditions, as you've seen, is that list that we first showed when we came on for the list of compassion allowances. And as I mentioned, HSP is not there and PLS is not there. So we're still working through the program of doing just applying for the disability benefits as HSP and PLS being a disability, but not necessarily under the you got it there? Under the heading of compassionate allowances. Doesn't mean it's not going to be eventually a compassionate allowance. You just have to prove up that you actually, as an individual, do qualify, whether it's compassionate or not compassionate. Compassion just means it's expediting. They move through the steps a lot quicker. I don't know how long it took you, Mary, or anybody else who's actually listening in or watching today, how long it took them to go through the process. I can tell you it took 8 months for us, and including going to see a doctor who was represented, or shall we say selected, by Social Security Administration and or DSS, Department of Social Services, to review all the paperwork, who was a neurologist, all the paperwork, and also a physical meeting to test out, shall we say, whether Jeannie had a disability or not a disability. So, okay, let's go through. If the condition that's, as we mentioned, HSP and PLS, so we don't have a qualifying disability under compassionate allowance, then you move on to steps 4 and 5. Step 4, can you do the work you did previously? They decide if the medical impairment prevents you from performing any of your past work, and if it doesn't, we'll decide you don't have a qualifying disability. If it does, they proceed to a step 5. So if you can't do the work you did in the past, we look to see if there's other work you can do despite your medical impairment. They consider medical conditions, age, education, past work experience, and any transferable skills you may have. If you can't do other work, we'll decide you qualify for disability benefits. If you can do other work, we'll decide that you don't have a qualifying disability and your claim will be denied. So the idea is that, are they moving you along the process to see if you can be removed as applying for the benefits? Yes, you did, but do you qualify? They will try and find to say that you're not. So the idea is, can you do other work? Well, that's kind of opens the door from a lot of different work that you might be able to do. But you want to be able to still submit your application for consideration. But as we mentioned, it's something where you have to present your case thoroughly, so you don't get, shall we say, get to the point where they say, okay, you don't qualify, you can file an appeal. Okay, well, there's an appeal process that you have in determining disability benefits, but we want to try and get you to the point where you can qualify the first time and don't have to go through a longer process. Now, as I mentioned, you can designate somebody to help you with this. As I mentioned, I did with Jeannie, and I used the form that was available through Social Security Administration. And it's actually part of the SSA.gov program that you have going through all disability, providing, shall we say, support for those people who are applying for disability. Now, information that they take, it's the standard stuff: Social Security number, proof of age, names, addresses, phone numbers of doctors, hospitals, clinics, dates of your visits and so forth like that, names and dosages of your medications, medical records from doctors, therapists, hospitals, clinics, and caseworkers, laboratory and test results. I mean, this could be MRIs, could be x-rays, could be a sort of different things that you will use to support your submission for obtaining these benefits. They also want to know where you worked, what kind of work you did, your most recent W-2 form. You have to provide it to them. They don't look for it. They don't get it from the IRS. If you're self-employed, a copy of your federal tax return. Now, we talk about compassionate allowance. Sure, there's an expedited approach that if you're covered under compassionate allowance, you get an expedited review, shall we say. But if you don't, then you still have to include other things that you would ordinarily under a compassionate allowance, which is, what's the medical condition? And I think, Norma, you and I talked about this, about applying for possibly getting HSP and a PLS included as part of the list for compassionate allowances, which would be nice if we could expedite that process so we can get people more, shall we say, into the program rather than out of the program, especially if resources or funds would be helpful. So what includes in that is that names of the condition or disease actually would be included as seeking this particular compassionate allowance, or shall we say determination that it's part of the program for compassionate allowance. The condition's description, diagnostic testing, physical findings, and believe it or not, what they call an ICD-10-CM coding. What the heck is that? We don't know. International Classification of Diseases. This is what hospitals and doctors use. They want to know the onset of the condition. When did it start? Late onset, early onset, progression of the condition, treatment and the treatment on the condition as well. So, but is it short-term or long-term? Well, PLS, HSP, we can only hope that this is going to be short-term, but we're going to have to wait for that particular point of it. Now, as I mentioned to you, I started this process for Jeannie back in 2009, 2010. Took about 8 months. A lot of that had to do with obtaining medical records, whether it be hospitals that we had gone to, doctors we had seen. You know, they want to have the records from you, but they want to, pardon the expression, they don't want to make sure, or they want to make sure it's not doctored, so that, no pun implied, but it comes directly from the hospital you went to, whether it be UCSF, NHMO, Mayo Clinic, John Hopkins, whatever the case may be. They would like to have it from them, verified that in fact it's certified for that group, etc. Should note the condition. Now, we went through this process and it was back and forth between me and a person from Department of Social Services at the state level, which in our case is Sacramento, and there was no face-to-face. It was strictly fax, believe it or not, email, or telephone. So other than that, you really don't have much contact with them. However, the final point was we referred to a doctor, a neurologist in San Francisco, set up by Department of Social Services and/or Social Security Administration to review all the paperwork, all the medical records, etc., to determine whether Jeannie qualified for benefits under SSDI. As I mentioned, if you have enough credits, you qualify for SSDI versus SSI. So we went to the doctor. I was not allowed, shall we say, in with the room, but I could tell you they went through an extremely thorough exam with Jeannie. And it got to the point, believe it or not, the doctor would continue to move Jeannie so she was kind of moving off the table because they had her on a table. And so that they wanted to see whether she had reflexes, that she would catch herself rather than fall off. And the idea, he did everything in his way to try and figure out, is this person faking it? Oh, we got the medical records, but is she faking it? So the idea is that they will test you one way or another to see if in fact you actually have a disability or a condition that should consider to be qualified for disability benefits. So we were successful, took 10 months, actually got to the point where termination was made, and there was a time period before checks actually started rolling in, and they went and had other checks provided for since the time of the termination to the time we started receiving them. So now we're going to look at Mary, because Mary brought up a point. She's an attorney and she did it for her own particular self. But does that mean that you need an attorney to do this? So that was one of the discussions that I had with Jeannie, as well as with Norma, on whether you need an attorney or not. As mentioned, you could have somebody represent you. They have a form specifically for that. Do you need an attorney to go through this initial process? I'm going to probably point out two things. You need an attorney if in fact you decide to go with an attorney that has, shall we say, specialty or experience in dealing with disabilities and or Social Security Administration. Because you don't want to pay an attorney to educate themselves so they can help you. The idea is that if you want to use an attorney, you might want to consider doing whatever you can yourself. And if you have a disability attorney that can review the paperwork before it's submitted, that's another way to go. Rather than just having to start from scratch from day one on, because I don't know what they charge or any costs up front, etc. There are programs out there that they say they're advocates. I don't know anything about them. And I don't know what they charge or whatever, but you might consider seeing what you can do yourself and then have a review. Now, here's another thought. Around the country, we have law schools. They have students. They have law clinics that are actually with students supervised by an attorney. It's possible that either at no cost or very little cost, that an attorney or a student attorney that's interested, law school student, interested in going into this particular phase of the law, might be interested or encouraged to help you go with this program to try and get these particular benefits. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I know over in Berkeley, UC Berkeley, which is right across the bay here, they have a clinic. It's managed by an attorney, and it's got a bunch of law students who may or may not be involved in, there's corporate law, there's personal injury law, there's consumer law, there's all sorts of different aspects of the law that people focus on once they become a full-fledged attorney. It might be somebody that might be interested, I'm interested in disability, workman's comp. I'm interested in that. So I want to maybe jump into something like that. And if so, here you have an approach where you can possibly do it at least cost, less cost to you, to go and provide an application and submission to the Social Security Administration for review. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. So anyway, how are we doing, Norma?
Well, we have a question up here. Dina, if you would like to go ahead with your question.
Hey, Dina.
Well, hi. So I just in the last few years went through the whole process and got approved within 4 months. I did it myself. And
for you.
I heard horror stories about
Yeah.
it taking 2 or 3 years and having attorneys and all that. And so I looked into, and I called a couple different attorneys to say, okay, I'm going to have somebody help me. And they both told me that they don't get involved until you're denied. You have to be denied for them to get involved and help
Mm.
you out. And so I was like, okay. Then the other thing is I had to stop working
Mm.
to even apply. And then even though I was approved within 4 months, they don't start paying you till
Yeah.
you're not working for 6 months.
Hmm. Now, did they backdate those checks as far as going from the date of determination forward,
Well,
or
no,
did they
no.
delay?
They since I stopped working in September, I had
Mhm.
approved in January. Payments started in March because it was 6 months from September. There was no able to be back paid.
Sounds like they're almost making it so that it's almost close to the year. In other words, you have this year, otherwise, if it's a short-term disability, they could say, okay, we'll deny you a claim, but you got it approved. So why
Well,
was delayed
yeah,
beyond
yeah,
6
no.
months?
So basically, part of their process is no matter who it is or what it is, it's 6 months from when you stop working. You can't get paid or have the benefits for the first 6 months that you're not working.
Hmm.
And then um I guess I didn't realize this. All of a sudden one day, it was March of this year, all of a sudden I got a deal in the mail. I'm now on Medicare, and you are qualified to be on Medicare 2 years after the date that you
Right.
start getting your benefits. And so I was lucky enough that I'm married, and so I
Mhm.
was able to be on my husband's insurance until this kicked in.
Wow. And you kind of got to wonder, what do people do that,
Right.
they got to work a little bit because they got to have money. I mean, there's a gap there. It's like some people have fallen into that zone that, how do you handle that? Dina, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure there's a lot more information that you can come back and share. Mary, do you have a comment or a question that you would like to ask at this time?
Yeah, I just want to say I am an attorney, but I know nothing about Social Security benefits. A friend of mine, I talked to him, but he didn't review my application beforehand. And I absolutely do not think you need to have an attorney unless you have an appeal. And there is absolutely no way you should go into a hearing, even though it's an administrative hearing, without an attorney. But at the application process, you don't need an attorney for that. And I started getting benefits 3 months after I applied.
Just out of curiosity, Mary, how long ago did you apply? And Dina, how long ago did you apply?
I applied in 2008, September of 2019, 18, 19, 19.
I applied in June 2nd of this year, and my
Wow.
first was September 2nd of this year.
I'm kind of impressed because, our process back in 2010 was 8 months. Actually, they're moving quicker for you two, Mary and you, Dina, than what they did back with me and Jeannie. So does that mean that they're moving the process along quicker and faster on the determination? But I don't know whether you have PLS or whether it's,
We all
HSP.
have SPG 7.
Okay, no
Mary
kidding.
and G. Yeah.
Wow.
And so you wonder, does it have something to do with actually the states? Because David, you're in California,
That's
Dina,
true.
you're in Iowa, you're in Missouri. So, maybe that there has something to do with the
Maybe.
different state offices.
Yeah, maybe we should have moved back then. Huh?
Well, the other thing that was different too is when I went to the doctor that they had, my husband was able to go into the
Was
room
he?
with me,
Wow.
and the whole exam was just silly.
Huh.
And when he's like, okay, can you lift 50 pounds and whatever, I'm like, yeah, I could lift it, but don't ask me to go anywhere.
Did they have you
And
do
after
any?
that, he's like, okay, we're done. Exam's over. I was like, okay.
So those doctor visits were in close proximity to your homes? I mean, they were
Yeah.
close enough that you guys could get there pretty easily and pretty quickly?
Yeah.
Good. Denise, you've got a comment. Thank you for joining us this evening. Go ahead and jump in with your comment or question. You got to unmute. There you go.
I lived in Florida about 20 years ago. And I've had my HSP all of my life. And I applied in Florida 5 different times.
Wow.
Could not get it. Had to move up to Omaha, Nebraska. Got it the first time.
Oh my gosh.
Don't know why.
And so are you now in Nebraska?
Actually, I'm in Iowa.
In Iowa. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, that is interesting. So you were in Florida, denied 5 times, then went to Omaha, Nebraska, applied first time, got it. That's just amazing that, that people have to go through all these different hoops and jumps to get through this process. Bless you all.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, Norma. It seems as though there's a difference no matter what state you're in. Florida maybe not as, shall we say, as receptive as maybe like Iowa or Missouri or whatever. But it's interesting how the states may be different or how they handle it. I'm assuming everybody's going through Department of Social Services for that particular state. Maybe the number of cases that they have in front of them. Don't know. Because I don't know what their caseload is like. I figured this gal that I was working with up in Sacramento, she had a pretty heavy caseload. That's why things got delayed. I remember having to follow up with phone calls and or email or whatever like that to touch base with her, just check on status, that kind of thing. But until we got to the doctor, which was, like I said, 6-7 months down the line. So it was interesting.
So
Denise, did you have comments you would like to make, Denise? Okay, because your hand is still raised. I'll lower that for you. Kenneth, did you have a comment that you have? You need to unmute, Kenneth. You've been talking, I apologize, but you need to unmute so that you can restart, please. Down at the bottom, if you'll scroll your cursor at the bottom, there's an unmute and a mute button. Okay, you go ahead and come on, and then we'll go ahead and take Dina's question again. When you get on, we'll come back to yours. Go ahead, Dina. You got something else to add?
The one thing I did is I had a couple different doctors that had wrote me letters for me, and the one in there said, I feel that she definitely qualifies for long-term and Social Security disability. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was just like one sentence, short and sweet. I also included a medical paper from Dr. Fink linking ALS along with HSP And so I've, since ALS is on the compassion list, my doctor in the note also linked it to spinobellar ataxia. So
Right.
that, so there was a lot of links to the compassion pieces. So maybe that was easier for them. I don't know.
I think buzzwords help. You
Yeah.
know, if you can tie it in with other conditions which are already a part of compassion allowances, it helps. Plus the notoriety of doctors such as like Dr. Fink is, my goodness. I think that it had a lot of weight, shall we say, in maybe that determination or decision made so you could get the benefits. I highly recommend, in fact, Norma, you and I talked about this as a possibility, that it would be nice to get doctors such as Dr. Fink, other doctors that also be a part of the, SPF, to possibly join forces to encourage and get a determination by the SSA, Social Security Administration, to have HSP and PLS included in that compassion and allowance group, so that you don't have to go through steps 1 through 3. You can go straight to 3 and then 4 and 5. And so you have a body of work, shall we say, to be included in your determination in your favor, shall we say. And I
Thank you.
highly recommend that.
Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and get Manu. You've got a question, and then Ken, you'll be in the wings. So just hang on real quickly. Go ahead, Manu. You've got questions?
Okay. My question is, I work with Social Security income. My dad gets fill out the W-2 forms, and Social Security, he do some taxes.
Okay. Very
And-
good. So go ahead, Manu.
And I have my dad sign my name.
Great. Good for you. So you were able to obtain Social Security benefit. Good for you. Now, do you have
Good for you.
HSP or PLS?
I think PTS.
Okay, PLS. Very good. Well, thank you for joining us. We appreciate that.
Mhm.
Is there anything else?
Did I get money back from Social Security?
Yeah. Very good. Glad you were able to obtain that. That's what we're here for, is to try to see what we can do to help get other
Right.
people, to apply for it and what the process is. And Kenneth, go ahead now. Do you have a question or a comment you'd like to make?
Yes, I just going back to the discussion about how in different states there seem to be, much faster or much slower approvals, and sometimes in places that don't give you quick approvals, multiple times having to apply. Is anybody aware of any kind of for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it a rating for different states? Is there a way to determine based on, I'm in New Hampshire. Is there a way to determine, whether it's 10% of people that are given a compassionate allowance right off the bat in our state versus other states? I'm just very interested, since this is a federal program, I'm very interested to hear that it can be so radically different on a state-by-state basis.
Well, and I would say that list is probably very scarce in order to obtain that and have that available. And I likely think that when you contact someone at the federal level, they would deny that that's actually happening across the United States.
Right.
They would
Of
say
course
that
they
they are
would.
following according to the rules and regulations and protocols that are set out as it's supposed to be for every state. But obviously, sitting here tonight, we're hearing differently. Dina, did you have a comment in that regard?
Yeah, the only thing I was thinking is it might be because she started applying 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, nobody really heard of HSP and PLS. And with technology and advancements and everything else, I think it's more and more on the, since Mary and I just recently are the most recent ones to have done it and got it right away. It probably is more that those two, HSP and PLS, are on the cusp of becoming a compassion allowance. They just haven't done it yet.
Well, and so that I can jump in there and tell you, when David and Jeannie had contacted us and we were talking about putting this together, because we had it on our actual workload, our do it list, if you will, that we were going to do what we could to see what the process is to actually get HSP and PLS, on the compassion list. We actually put in an application, and it was a lot of information that we had to put together and submit online. And I'm just going to be honest, I used all the information that was as similar as possible and corresponded as possible to that was related to ALS. And then I added all the other information that's associated with PLS and HSP. And it was probably 5 or 6 days later, they thanked us for submitting the application, but that we're denied, that we're not going to, receive that designation. So we now have it again on our do it list, and we're going to go into another route, another process, and see, where we need to, expand upon that and submit that again and apply for some kind of, an appeal process. So hopefully more and more people are actually applying for it. Maybe that will register with whoever is approving those, across the federal, the top level, the DC level. And then we can see what we can do to get that included, get both HSP and PLS included. Just kind of interesting, how all this works. But
It's
really
interesting.
the hardest part that I'm hearing is that you have to go 6 months without income.
Right.
I mean, how do you do that? You got to save up, which is already, who saves? You got to save up enough money to carry you for 6 months, and there's no guarantee that even 6 months are you going to have enough income, before you're going to be considered eligible. That's sad. That's hard.
Well, yeah, so you're eligible for payments at that point if, say, they don't start paying you for 10 months or whatever. They will retroactive that for those 4 months, or however a year, or however long it took. But up to that first 6 months, you're just out.
Yes, I mean, can you apply for like food stamps, or can you apply for other kinds of services that might be available in the meantime? I mean, that's kind of tough.
Well, the other thing that I think is tough is not having, you have to have COBRA insurance, or somehow, some way you have to have some of their medical insurance before 2.5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. This is Colette. I'm sorry to break in. Hi, Dina.
Hi.
I have a question.
Hi,
Now,
Colette.
am I misunderstanding? Do they check as far as how much money you have in your accounts when you apply?
No.
Not that I'm
so
aware
that's
of.
not a factor? Okay,
No.
good. Because I'm trying to save, for that rainy day.
Well, I had somebody else just here yesterday say that they were thinking it's kind of like bankruptcy in a way, that they would take all your investments, your 401k and all of that stuff, that, because if you're he must have thought it was like bankruptcy, and that any asset you have, they would, you have to get rid of to be able to then get disability, and that's not right.
Okay, so you don't have to lose all that, right?
Oh,
Yeah, I
no.
mean, there might be a consideration for Medi-Cal type of program, but I'm not aware of anything requiring investigation or inspection of your bank records, et cetera, for disability benefits.
Right.
So, I mean, there might be programs actually for, through social services that you might be able to get some assistance from them during the time you're waiting for a determination, or hopefully you get a determination, at least something that'll cover you during that particular time.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions that you would like to ask at this point or at this time? Well, David, unless there is something else in particular, thank you so very much for joining us tonight and helping to elevate, this as a subject. And I think this is something that, we need to continue to visit, and we need to be elevating our, applications and information. And Dina and Mary, thank you guys so much for your willingness to provide counsel, or maybe not counsel is not the right word, but, advice and help other folks. Appreciate your putting in your email address so that folks can contact you to, ask questions. I mean, this is really serious, and it's really, right at the heart. I mean, because some people, they need that financial assistance as much as possible, and we need to find ways that we can get, our diseases on that list, because there's a lot of people that they can't work.
That's right.
They haven't, and I don't see how in the world some of them have been able to even, survive. And I'm sure some of them are barely hanging on. So thank you guys all very much for that. David, thank you, and Jeannie so much for, jumping in and helping us to, bring this subject matter to our attention. We're going to grab the information that we can. I've put a bunch of links over in the chat
Super.
box, but we'll grab some of that information, and we'll be seeing what we can do to get links either to these pages or download these pages ourselves and some of the PDFs and have those available on our website. If there's any other questions, please feel free to jump in now. We've already exceeded our normal hour. Again, I'd like to thank you, David and Jeannie, for being a part of tonight, and everyone else that had questions and comments. So I want to tell you guys that if you haven't already seen the emails that we've been sending out, we are still in the year-end giving. We have a group of anonymous donors that are willing to match donations up to $330,000 until
Wonderful.
January the 5th. I know, isn't that wonderful? I mean,
That's
gosh,
fabulous.
that's just, yeah, we are, trying. We've raised the goal of $1,500,000 this year, and we're really, really close to getting that. So we're really hopeful that there are some folks out there that are, in that giving spirit. They're able to, if they can. So if you guys have seen those, also, check your emails. If you have not yet registered with the foundation, then you need to do that so that we have your information, and that you guys are getting these e-blasts that we call Spastic World newsletters. And the most recent, I think the ones that have come out is the list of, I think, 7 doctors that received approval for their grant proposals to be
Great.
studying PLS and HSP. So that list is on our website, and you can, jump over there and see those. I'm hopeful that after the new year, then we're going to continue to have these SPF talks, and we're going to be inviting some of these doctors and scientists, investigators to come on and to talk about what they're studying, how they're going about that, what kind of hope they see with us. So, you guys just pay attention to our social media, and then for sure register with the foundation so that your email, you will be getting these e-blasts in your email. So with all that said, this is going to be our last SPF Talks for the year. I'd like to wish all of you Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and thank you guys so very much for supporting all the work that we're trying to do here, and the connectivity of keeping us all together as a family. I really greatly appreciate all. Thank you, David.